Ugh. Ow. Sorry about that. Had to try to adjust myself here. But, hello everyone. All my fellow aspies, my fellow non-aspies, and what have you. Today is November the 1st. National Autisum Speaks Day, or something or other. The main point of today is that it is basically a day for those of us like myself to express our creativity. And so I want to basically explain to you guys my life experiences with autism. Explain some of my hobbies, and kind of explain a little bit of my personal viewpoint without getting too, shall we say, nitpicky and tyrannical. Because I have had a lot of people that say that I'm very much like that, so I'll try not to offend anyone. But first off, my name is Steven. It is spelt with a PH, although most of my friends call me Steve for short. I'm not real nitpicky. If you want to call me Steven or Steve, that's fine with me, but if we're in a professional setting, I prefer Steven. If we're in a casual setting, I prefer Steve, but otherwise, I'm not nitpicky about it. But what do? I do YouTube videos, and my YouTube channel name is SlyCooper88. Now, what is the purpose of me doing these YouTube videos? Well, my YouTube channel, unlike this video, there are a couple of videos that I pretty much do that are like this. But usually I do get very vulgarious. I do swear. I do say some very vulgar things, as do a lot of my friends. But for the most part, I like doing fun videos. And my life experiences with autism are simply like this. You know, I grew up with Asperger's at, I would say it was 3 or 4, I think, when I was diagnosed with Asperger's. And how my family knew that I had Asperger's was because my grandfather, on my mom's side, had discovered that I was running around in the hallways back when you know, I was born in the apartment building that we lived in. This was back when my father was still in the military. And as I recall, according to my mother, I was running up and down the hall. According to my mother, or rather my grandfather, my mother noticed it too after he said something to her. But generally, I was running up and down the hallways, flapping my hands as if I was a bird, and acting like no normal 3-year-old would do. I would do odd things. I would pull out pans and play with them and stack them all together like they were Legos. Now, this doesn't sound odd, but it's not exactly something that I think a normal child would really do. At least, allegedly, that's the way it was brought up to me. And when I got tested, I did in fact find out that I was very high functioning. I was very intelligent. I was always a very quiet kid. I didn't really socialize much. I always kept to myself. I was not really very outgoing. I was hardly scared to want to approach anyone for that matter. And I did kind of grow up with very few friends. Usually whenever I made a friend, they would always usually move away without hesitation. And it wasn't because of me, it was because their family, a lot of the families that I went to elementary school and what have you, were all in the military. So their parents, whether it be their mother, their father, etc., they would get stationed to another place, and I would end up losing a friend. Or some just were not making it and ended up moving like downstate or something. what I can recall from pre-K, at least in terms of memories, is that, I was kind of an oddball child. The kids always used to pick on me. I was always called retard and dumb. Adults. I was also a very uncontrollable child, although I don't like to admit it. I prefer to suppress that part of me. But since I'm doing a video and I'm telling you my life experiences, I figure I should open Pandora's box just for you guys. But I was a very uncontrollable child, and I've always had anger issues growing up. Without hesitation, the slightest thing could set me off, and even as an adult, I still struggle with that. I mean, I was playing a video game this morning and I just flipped out for no reason because I was at one really tough part in the game. And I always felt bad. I always do feel bad, I should say, about losing my temper because I don't mean to. And oftentimes I would be restrained. I would be physically restrained because I was just out of control. And that's why I don't like physical contact too much. Like if you touch me, I would flinch. It's because, I was physically restrained so many times as a kid that every time that you physically touch me, even if it's to pat me on the back, I'm going to tense up and feel uncomfortable. I feel that I should just pick you up and throw you halfway across the room. And that was simply because I just was restrained so much as a kid that now I cringe every time somebody physically touches me. And I'm not going to go on some ho-hum and make up stories, but I do believe, thinking back to it, that there may have been signs that I was verbally or physically abused, although it wasn't like full on. It wasn't within my family or any such thing as that, but there were a few incidents, at least I can vaguely recall, where there might have been signs, or it may have particularly at the time been that, but that I wasn't wise to it. But, I prefer to kind of leave that part of my life behind me because it's like, no dwelling on it. But I grew up not being a very liked kid, and I always laugh because I tell people I'm like Peter Parker, I'm like Spider-Man. I just got that really just ridiculously bad luck. It seemed like nothing went right for me, or at least in my eyes it felt like nothing went right for me. But it was when I got my first girlfriend, who we are no longer on speaking terms, and it was also when I actually graduated high school that I felt things were starting to turn around. I'm still not where I want to be, but I'm no better off than I was before. But let me get into that a little bit more. I had repeated third grade. I was held back a grade because I thought that, because the area that we had moved in when I was like 8, 9 years old, I believe, it was stressful for me. And I have a lower normal average, I guess, like reading range or something and what have you. And Yep, I'm back again. Apparently the video cut off. I can only record these in 8-minute intervals, so if you see me get up a couple of times and what have you, I am sorry, but that's my camera's limit, not me. But anyway, guys, as I was saying, I have an average, or like lower average, like reading level, or at least that's the way it seemed. But I'm pretty much within a normal reading range now. But when I was attending elementary and like junior high and stuff, I did have a slightly lower reading level. I'm not going to go into every detail of my life story, but to skip ahead to junior high, junior high is what made the most impression on me, because number one, I was pretty much babied through junior high because I was in a lot of special ed classes and what have you, And it wasn't until I hit high school that I realized that I was babied through. Like, I was actually given answers by teachers subliminally, but I did very minimal work for it, or at least that's the way it seems to me. But for the most part, I would say I had an on-again, off-again type experience with a lot of what went on throughout me going through school. And for the most part, junior high was a very cruel experience. That's when I started hitting that age, started becoming interested in girls, and I found out very cruelly that a lot of the jocks and cheerleaders pretty much just wanted to make a sick game out of watching me, get all like hearts and Cupid arrows over every girl that I saw. This is kind of a womanizing tendency that I still do have, but that I try to not, shall we say, be shallow or, too nitpicky. I try to be very open-minded towards a lot of women, but that's not what I'm here to discuss. We're not here to discuss what kind of girls I like and what I don't. That's not the purpose of this video. The main purpose of this was that, yeah, I was basically very cruelly treated, and as you can imagine, I started to become very distrustful of people, and even today I still don't trust very many people, even my best friends, family, etc., because I do have this phobia, and it is an actual phobia that does exist, but it's the phobia of betrayal. I'm always constant, but then again, a lot of that is my severe paranoia. I started becoming paranoid over time that people were out to get me. And I still, even at this moment, I'm still very paranoid. It's not anything that you can blame me for. It's just I had a lot of bad experiences, and it's not easy to shake that feeling. Anybody who knows exactly what I'm talking about, you know what I mean by it. You just can't shake it immediately. It's going to take a while. And I would see therapists and whatnot, but it wouldn't really work. I would usually just play mind games with the therapists anyway, so it was pointless. And skip ahead to high school, I had no personal assistant, nobody. It was just me and myself, and I hated it. But then I started to gradually understand and actually appreciate actual independence, self-reliance. And I would say in terms of school, I was always at least a high C to lower A student. Most of my grades were in like the 3.0 average. Most of them, not all of them. And for the most part, I would say that high school had a lot of grueling moments, but it had a lot of good moments. And it was in that moment that I had first met Matt, who I don't talk to anymore. But I also met Seth, who has been my best friend for the better part of maybe 5 years now. And Seth is probably the one true best friend that I will never, that I take Seth for granted, and I shouldn't. But for the most part, I'm glad that Seth puts up with a lot of my nonsense, because he's the only friend that I've ever had, at least up until the friends that I've made currently, but at that time he was the only friend that did not leave me, did not abandon me, and he has stuck by me ever since, regardless. And it still amazes me, and he and I just laugh at it, because it amazes me that here's a guy who may or may not have Asperger's himself, but was very okay and accepting of that. He was not bothered. because I was always very skeptical that if I told somebody I had Asperger's, that, you know, they were just going to abandon me because I was the retard. I was the guy that slowed everyone down and that I was too dumb to make it through high school. And Seth was just like, huh, you know, that's cool. That means that you're really intelligent. Did not expect that answer. And as a matter of fact, you know, just this morning, Seth and I were sitting there talking. And it was over time that I started meeting other friends. It was also because I play video games a lot. It was where I met Ian, F.W. Waller, as he's called on YouTube. And I will in fact post a link here at the bottom. If I don't get it right on time, then I will get it within the hour for you guys. So that way you can watch his video too, in case for some reason nobody can see it or it doesn't get posted. But, you know, I met Ian, and Ian, he's an aspie as well. I have another great friend who happens to have nearly the same identical traits and upbringing as me. You know, two peas in a pod. So it's like, alright, now I got two best friends. And now that my YouTube thing is starting to kind of take off, and I'm starting to see kind of a flourishment, and also the fact that I'm starting to meet people that are within the same interest groups as myself and Ian, you know, it dumbfounds me. I will admit I take everyone for granted, and I shouldn't, but I do, because, you know, I am kind of dumb like that. You know, it's the better part of being human. But I'm actually going to now stop with me actually vlogging, at least in this segment of the video, and I'm going to actually switch it over to
And now we move on to the slideshow portion of this video. Unfortunately, it cut me out before I could say that, but anyway, ever since I was 5 or 6, I've always read comic books. And I remember very fondly the very first comic book characters that I ever read were, of course, these guys, the X-Men. Comic books have been a big part of my life. And there was a time, right around what I would say when I was 8 or 9, that I stopped reading comics because I quote-unquote kind of grew up out of them. But I later found out that, subconsciously, I knew that comic books were going to stop existing, and so not wanting to see something I like die, I just stopped reading them altogether. However, comic books never truly left my life, as there were TV shows and TV movies and even motion pictures that subliminally were actually based on comic books. And it wasn't until I saw the first live-action Spider-Man and X-Men movies that I started getting back into comics. And comic books have been an essential part of my life. I've always loved the idea of the superhero. And the X-Men are very special to me because they're mutants, they're outcasts, and as a child growing up with Asperger's, I was drawn to that. These group of individuals from all around the world, different religions, credos, but they all shared a common bond. They were outcasts. And I've always loved that about the X-Men or any comic book character in general. Just the human and human quality-esque struggles that every hero goes through. And one of the major influences or idols of my life, aside from the X-Men, is probably the most recognized character of all. Yes, the grandfather of superhero comics himself, the Man of Steel, the last son of Krypton, if you will, Superman. And Superman, I say that I idolize Superman, and it's an understatement because I grew up watching the Chris Reeve movies and reading the comics back in the 90s when Superman had a mullet. But I've always loved Superman as a character. Many people say that he is a very unrelatable character, and I very heavily disagree. In fact, I would boldly say that Superman is probably the most human of DC Comics heroes. Because here is a guy who himself is an outcast. He's got all these amazing abilities, could take over the world, become a dictator. Yet it's his humanity, or what you would consider humanity, and the fact that he is a very kind and genteel being with a very strong sense of right and wrong. And Superman, and that was something about Superman that I always gravitated towards, was that he had all these abilities, but yet it was his humanity, it was his compassion, it was all the good things, all the morals that he embodied that I will admit I struggle every day, but I always look to Superman for, shall we say, my moral compass. I'm not the most perfect person in the world, but I do try to honor the values of not just Superman, but many other heroes like Wonder Woman and Green Lantern, and just that's one of the many reasons why I love superheroes, is because it's just, I want to be a good person. I want to do good things. And that's why I both love superheroes and comics. But I have many other passions. I love horror movies, creature features, and what have you, but I could go through the list, but I'm not going to. Rather, I'm just going to list the fact that I love video games. And I'm going to talk about one specific video game franchise that I absolutely love, and that is the Mass Effect games. I love Mass Effect because I say very boldly, but I feel it is true, is this generation's Star Wars / Star Trek. And I've always loved the sci-fi genre more than I do fantasy. But that doesn't mean that video games like Dragon Age are not fun, or Conan, or any such thing for that matter. But Mass Effect's sci-fi elements I always find very intriguing. I've always loved sci-fi, the supernatural, and the science fiction and alien worlds and what have you. That's why H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds was one of my favorite books, and that's why I also love the classic black and white movie. I have so many passions and so many loves, and I've met people that share the same viewpoint that I do. And I look at video games like Mass Effect as a great gateway to how it could possibly shape us as human beings. The fact that, you can decide to save the galaxy, or make, good decisions, or make bad decisions. I think that's a great quality in video games, but I'm not going to debate that. But back to what I was saying.
As I was saying, sorry about that. As I was saying though, you got so many loves and you got so many passions, and I'm fortunate to meet the people that I do. And know them, even, for that matter. And I'll try not to ramble here like I did in the last part. And also, I figure I gotta wrap this video up, because I'm sure a lot of you are just tired of hearing me talk now. But to end this on a good note, you guys, I've had the good fortune of knowing people that I do. Knowing Ian, knowing Seth, a lot of the people that I know through YouTube, my family. You know, I'm not a touchy-feely kind of guy, but I just want to actually say to any of those people that are watching, you know who you are. I'm glad that I have you guys at my side, because it has been a very long and tedious journey, and my life experience with autism is simply that it is a very long and sometimes very lonely and frustrating road. And you will be depressed, you will be hurt, you will go through pain, but as they say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I've become a very stronger individual. Maybe not mentally, maybe not emotionally, maybe not even physically. But spiritually, I'm very strong. And I get stronger every time I learn to just let stuff go. Because I worry about my future, I worry about here and now, I worry about everything. And I do so to the point that it makes me nauseated and sick. And as I'm getting older, I'm starting to realize that, you know what? Be responsible, but have fun at the same time. If you choose to be a workaholic, that's your thing. But my experience, not just with autism, but with life in general, you gotta balance being responsible with having fun. Because if you're not having fun and you're taking on way too much responsibility, then you're not really living, are you? Not at all. Take away everything that a man loves, and what is he? He is a husk. He is emptiness. He is everything that he disdains, everything that he does not want to be. I'm going to leave you guys with that little quotation, that little poeticness. And I'm also going to actually leave you with another quotation from one of my favorite DC Comics characters, Dr. Fate. A line that he said to somebody, whether it be Donna Troy or one of the other DC Comics superheroes. I see everyone's fate but my own. And sometimes that scares me. But when I see the fate of someone as strong as you, I believe in tomorrow. I hope you all have enjoyed this, and I hope for those of you that are in the same position that I am, or are kind of having similar issues like I did growing up, I hope that me talking about this has made you feel better. And hopefully a lot of you were at least moderately entertained by what I had to say. But thank you all for watching. And you know, everybody just needs to keep doing what they need to do, whether it be to spread autism awareness or to educate yourself on autism. Because as not only an aspie, but as someone who has grown up watching other people that are both low functioning and high functioning, there needs to be more awareness of this. That way, kids don't grow up to be, shall we say, in the same kind of mindset that I am. So I did it. So this is pretty much my video of trying to help said children understand what they're going through, and also to share my life experiences along with everyone else on this day